health authorities to require the company to fluoridate the water, also places they also requires the health authority to indemnify the company forever against any loss or damage. So, you know, the HAF might like to write, for example, to the successor organisation, saying, look, you bear a liability for a long, long time, whether fluoridation goes on or not. Secondly, there's a water white paper due this year. There's water legislation about once every 10 years. And there's a pre-consultation on the HAF website. It doesn't mention fluoridation at all, but you might like, again, to, when the consultation starts, to raise the issue of what's happened about fluoridation.
Okay, thank you. Very useful. Gentleman, right at the back. Yeah.
Brian Hooper. I'm struck by the reckless expenditure argument in relation to buying a load of fluoride for after the decision has been taken, if it gets taken. The same thing, I think, could be applied in the knowledge that none of the bodies who will continue to have responsibility actually want to put any fluoride in this stuff through this dosing station. It strikes me that it would, under those circumstances, be reckless to incur the capital expenditure for the dosing station, and I think that's another argument that we should pursue.
Yes, agreed. Thank you. There was another hand up at the back there. Yeah, I think it's you then, John. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Right.
I couldn't see.
John Pope. Should chemical fluoride be delivered too easily, it will eventually be passed by Chickenhall Waterworks into the River Itchen. Just downstream from the waterworks, there is a Itchen waterworks company that takes water out of the Itchen and delivers it to Portsmouth. So that means that as Chickenhall Waterworks will not be able to filter out a lot of the fluoride from the water, Portsmouth's population will by default get a fluoridated water supply. There are 45 million litres of water extracted by Portsmouth Water Company a day, and it gets delivered to 15% of those 650,000 customers, and that is 97,000 people. I take it that these 97,000 people were not consulted upon, they would be getting a fluoridated water supply. If this is the case, then the whole consultation process is flawed.
Chairman, I'm prompted to suggest that we may see an echo headline I've never expected to see, which is Portsmouth saves Southampton.
Steve.
Hi, everyone. Steve Matthews. It's interesting that point you just made, because that came up with the oysters.
Yes.
But I was told by the environment people that the effluent coming out of the pipes, the concentration would be so low that it would be actually lower than the background fluoride level. So that kind of finished it for me. I had no way of pursuing it further than that. And that was from the Environment Agency themselves that actually contacted me. So it seems to me that there's no more leeway with that argument, because it's coming out the pipe, but it's being diluted by the sea water. As for the freshwater thing, I'm not sure about that, so it's worth thinking about.
Well, we actually know that it's about a third of the fluoride is retained in the effluent. John's nodding, so I thought that was right. It's about 0.36, I think.
That's going into
parts per million. So that goes into the fresh water. Where if it goes into the ocean, because the ocean already has a fairly high background of fluoride, which is of course is why you can't dump hexafluorosilicic acid straight into the sea, because it already has.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of way that you could create the argument where that you're basically dumping it at sea without permission, even though it's being diluted to a minuscule concentration?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be difficult because obviously DEFRA and the drinking water inspector must also, not the inspector, but must also do that for the West Midlands already. So I think we're kind of caught then, yeah. But in freshwater, I mean, if it's been done, I mean, the other argument is that if I presume if fluoridated water gets into a wider area than just is, there are questions about both the freshwater streams, i.e. the Itchen and the Test, which may be something we would want to follow up at some point. I've got to see 2 hands, 3. Should we start at the back? There's a lady, I think, right at the back.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Maria Hutchings. I stood at the general election for the Conservative Party for the Eastern constituency. And I've been following the campaign since the very beginning when you had your consultations at the St Mary's Stadium. And I think what HFA has been doing all the way through is completely wonderful, and we've been trying to back that and get signatures for you. This morning I was out knocking doors in the Eastern constituency. I spoke to about 35 people. Knowing I was coming, I thought, well, I'd ask them what their opinion was. I only spoke to one person who actually agreed with fluoridating water, and their response was, well, if they're giving it to us for free, it's worth having. I'm a mother of 4 children, so what HFA and Stephen and his team have been doing has been fantastic for my family, and I want to support you as much as I can. But at the St Mary's Stadium consultation originally, I brought up an issue which Hampshire County Council quite rightly picked up on, which is, yes, this is a matter of choice, but it's also a matter of choice for people who don't have a voice, namely the babies that are being born into this area. The American Dental Association have continually stated that if children are being formula fed, they should not have water mixed with their formula from fluoridated tap water, and have told American mothers that they must buy bottled water. Now, I brought this up at the St Mary's Stadium consultation, and the SHA representative basically blanked me. When I said, are you going to inform the women in Southampton and the families in Southampton if they had in America that they should use bottled water? She said, no. Quite frankly, the amount of money that was put aside, I might be incorrect here, I'm not a specialist, but I think it's something like 400 million to set this up. Could we be spending that better to educate our children and maybe get them to have their teeth brushed at the breakfast clubs in the morning? And at the end of the day, I've got 2 disabled children out of 4. One is 24 and one is coming up for 18. And both of them have only ever had one filling. And believe you me, it's not very easy when you've got an autistic child who has psychosis from 17 and is this tall to get him to brush his teeth. But I do understand that there are parents and families who do struggle. So let's help them by spending that money in education, in our schools, with our dental care, and making sure that if people have got a choice, why don't we offer those people who want fluoridated water the opportunity to go to their local supermarket and buy it, but don't put it in our tap water.
There was another hand near at the front. I can't remember who. There's quite a few actually. Shall we start with you, sir?
Alex Shepherd from Totton. Where do they get this wonderful stuff called fluoride from?
Right. There's a long answer. Do you want to go at that?
Yeah, well, it's a byproduct of the fertilizer industry. I've got a data sheet here with all the goodies in it. We've got arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, iron, iodine, lead, mercury, and so on and so forth. As Stephen pointed out at the beginning, if you've got 112 tons going, around 2 tons of that is going to be these impurities. Now, if you, I challenge you to call the council and say, I'm just binning some mercury in my wheelie bin, and you'll probably have someone around pretty sharpish, like, what the hell do you think you're doing? You're not allowed to put it in the wheelie bin, but you can drink it.
No, I read a bit from a book that I was shown, and the stuff was scraped from the chimneys in America.
Okay, right. I think, in America they do use, although they're beginning to switch to Chinese producers. If you think about this country, with a few problems they've had with those as well, but in this country, the hexafluorosilicic acid, and I think it's important, I'm sure most people know this, it is a different kind of fluoride to the fluoride you find in toothpaste. Toothpaste fluoride is sodium fluoride, which has been through a whole series of lab tests to ascertain that it is safe to put in toothpaste. Hexafluorosilicic acid is a fluoride which is produced and manufactured from the waste material involved in the phosphate fertilizer industry. And it's mined by a company in Spain, and they send the material off to other countries to make the phosphate fertilizer, and they have all this rock left. And what they do is they manufacture that, and in the process produce hexafluorosilicic acid. So this is an industrial product. And I think we need to be very clear that, and it's never been assessed or tested as a medicine or, in a sense, for human consumption. But it is okay to stick it in our drinking water. So, so that's the...
Can I just ask you one thing before I sit down and let somebody else speak? This is a tube of toothpaste.
Mm-hmm.
It says here, contains sodium fluoride.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and it gives a percentage. Children of 6 years and younger use a pea-sized amount for supervised brushing to minimise swallowing in case of intake of fluoride has been exceeded.
Yes.
Consult your dentist or doctor if...
Absolutely. All forms of fluoride are dangerous, even sodium fluoride.
My two grandsons used to eat it.
Yeah. Well, for those of you that can remember, in the consultation, there was a lovely video produced by the Strategic Health Authority, and a very nice public health dentist doing it, showing it. And it starts with a lovely picture of a small child putting toothpaste on their brush. And what did it show? Toothpaste, a long stream of toothpaste. I mean, totally against all regulation. The point is that one of the problems about fluoride is overexposure. And studies in the States show that 3-year-olds swallow about 2/3 of their toothpaste. So it is incredibly important, given the level. We talk about 1 part per million. Toothpaste has between 1,000 and 1,500 parts per million of fluoride. So you can imagine swallowing large amounts of that is very, very high dose. But children do swallow their toothpaste. And you get fluoride from all other kinds of sources. So if you put it in the water as well, you just up, in fact, as the Hampshire County Council consultation showed, you increase the amounts by about 50%. So you're increasing everybody's load of fluoride. And this is incredibly important. It isn't just about putting it in the water. It's in toothpaste, it's in mouth rinses, you get it in tea, you get it in fruit juices, you get it in some wines, you get it on some foodstuffs. If we fluoridate this area, people's vegetables growing allotments will have fluoridated water if they water it. You know, you can start to see how this kind of thing builds up. And the point about over-excess and what Maria Hutchins was talking about, small children will get excess amounts. Arshad, do you want to check?
That's a very valid point. Now, if they go ahead and fluoridate at 1 part per million, 1 glass of water is the equivalent of a pea-sized amount of toothpaste. So when I had this radio discussion, and Jayanti John was there from the Strategic Health Authority, the South Central Strategic Health Authority, people correct me, I asked her this. I said, okay, so what you're proposing, if I drink 1 glass of this, it's equivalent to having a pea-sized amount of toothpaste. And here on this tube of toothpaste, it's telling me to contact the doctor or poison control. And again, just blank faces. It's really shocking. You know, I think people have been given this image that there's these people in lab coats who have done some, really detailed research and everything's fine. But every question you put to them, they really, it's quite dangerous how their lack of knowledge, and these guys are in charge of putting into the water. And that doesn't, even if we start talking about children, I mean, dosages are according to, obviously, your size, your height, your weight. And can you imagine a child where the mother is making all the formula milk with fluoridated water? I mean, for 6 months, the child's blood-brain barrier is not even fully developed yet. Can you imagine the damage that's going to be done there? Again, I asked the same question to Jayanti John about this, and She said, it's not an issue. She said, it's fine. And I said, no, the EPA, they put out warnings, the American dentalists, and she said, no, they haven't. So it's really like banging your head against a brick wall.
But then everything's fluoridated. I mean, if you drink, buy a jar of jam or something.
Well, yeah, the point Stephen made, that once it
everything's
enters
not-
into the system, you really can't control it. I mean, there's shrimp in the Gulf of Mexico. Because of the Prozac in the effluent, the shrimp are losing any inhibitions and coming to the surface and being eaten by the birds. Yeah. So once you put these kinds of chemicals in, we really don't know. It's like the chaos theory. It gets out into the system, and how does it end up? Who does it affect? I mean, how many women here have got thyroid problems? Don't put your hands up. Personal question. But the point is, in Mexico and in Germany, about 30, 40 years ago, they used to give fluoride tablets to control the function of your thyroid gland. So women who already got thyroid problems are going to have a lot more thyroid problems. So this is all out there, and it's just they're totally ignoring us. That's the only point. That the only way they can get away with this is by not having a dialogue.
And we don't know. We could all be overdosed, couldn't we? We wouldn't know what we're taking.
Oh yes, you have no way of knowing unless you're very strict about controlling what you take. But a study about 10 years ago in the States showed that adults, just in adults, there was a 6-fold difference in the amount of fluoride intake between people. So, that's quite vast. I mean, you wouldn't have them with any other kind of medication whatsoever.
I mean, one of the largest studies done by the National Institute of Dental Research in the US, they found that 41% of the people had dental fluorosis and 3% had severe dental fluorosis. So we're talking about dealing with these children with tooth decay. What about all the children that are going to have dental fluorosis? And as Stephen's just said, the level of tooth decay now in Southampton is a national average. So now we're going to have a new problem, which is dental fluorosis, brittle teeth. It's really irresponsible.
Jenny?
Can I say, actually this is really directed to Dr. Julian. We are where we are today because of the legislation, because of the fluoridation clauses, and I have always said, and I know Arshad and David, Councillor David, actually agrees with this. The legislation, the fluoride part, the fluoride clauses in the legislation have actually allowed this situation to arise. And what is really scary is that we may win the situation here in Southampton, because we've been fighting for it for a long time. But as you say, it may be that we are going to have to find someone who fits that very tight criteria in order to take a legal action. That is going to happen over and over and over again throughout the country because the legislation allows it to be so. Because that legislation was written specifically and in my view very deceptively in order that people were conned into believing that they had a voice and that their views will be listened to when in fact they don't. And that legislation is enshrined now. And the only way that we're going to stop this, and the only way that we are actually going to stop the spread of it in this country and thousands, if not millions and millions of pounds being spent, is by actually removing those clauses. That's all it would take. But no one is going to do that. And I believe that we are actually putting the nation at huge, huge risk.
Well, thank you for that. I'm not quite as pessimistic as you are, because I think there are two elements to this, and I hasten to add I'm not an expert in the field, but I do recall making a speech in Parliament, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I shall go back to the Common Speeches section of my website, which is easy to navigate, and perhaps if you think it's worth doing, you might want to look at it. I do recall doing a little bit of research into these regulations which were part and parcel of that Water Act when it went through. And if I remember correctly, it was, I hate to use the word watered down, but in fact originally the legislation was quite tightly drafted. I may be wrong about this, I'm really sort of creaking with the old grey cells here. But as I recall, what happened was that the government of the day weakened the provision of it, I think at the stage when it was going through the House of Lords. Because as it was originally drafted, I think it would have made it quite certain that the people had to give their consent before it could proceed. And when it was weakened, so as to say they have to have regard for the amount of support or whatever, I'm pretty certain, and I think I quoted this in the speech that I made, I'm pretty certain that a lot was said when that change was debated to try and reassure everybody, but that this still meant that the popular will, you know, would not be discounted. Whereas, as we know, this bunch, at any rate, take the view clearly that no majority could ever be large enough for the people to oppose this, for them not to override it, which makes a nonsense of having any referral at all to popular opinion, because if you're basically saying it can be 99 or 100% against and we'll still do it, then why have any legislation there at all? So I agree with you that it would be a good thing. I don't think it would be a good thing just to take the regulation out completely, because then I think that would mean there was no reference to public opinion at all. I think what it needs to do is to be strengthened and reinstated. But having said all that, so that's the bad, that's where I'm with you. The bit where I'm not so clear that the threat is quite so grave is this, and let us give credit where credit is due. The government have decided, not because of fluoride, but for wider reasons, that they don't want these undemocratic strategic health authorities to continue in existence. And therefore, if the power to do this is going to be handed down to the local authorities as it is, then there may be some local authorities in some parts of the country that decide that they wish to fluoridate the water, but they will then have to take into account, not just in theory, but at election time, the views of the people. So I'm quite sure that the original idea and why so much effort was put into the scheme in Southampton was, I'm quite sure that there were all sorts of SHAs all over the country who were zooming in, focused on this, thinking if we can get it through in Southampton, despite the opposition to it, then we can do it anywhere. But what I think will have scuppered that will be the fact that the SHAs are being abolished. But you're absolutely right. As long as we retain on the statute book ineffective regulations, then there is always a danger that public opinion can be overruled. So the ultimate solution would be to try and amend the regulations.
Yes. Sorry, can I just say that is the whole point of what I was saying?
Yes.
That in fact none of this needed to happen if those fluoridation clauses were not in there in the first place.
Well, we're not inadequate in the first place.
Well, it shouldn't be. The people of this country should not have to fight by community, council by council, to have this thing taken out. It should not be in there in the first place. If there are people who want it, I mean, we do all forget here that fluoride is very easily available. If you want fluoride tablets, you can take them. If the argument that poorer people need to access it, first of all, they should be given the information, the medical information, which would oppose that. But if they're determined to have it, then doctor surgeries can actually give it to them for free. It will cost far less than actually putting it in the water. Yes. Would it not?
Indeed.
Yes. Good girl.
There's a number of hands just here, yeah. Just here, so I saw a hand.
My name's David Maddock. I'm a chemist. Well, today I am.
Julian from Shirley, Southampton. I just scribbled a few lines down as I left the house this morning. I saw this on the website. So Arkansas, their local water utilities group, have refused to put fluoride in their water because of the corrosive nature of it. Their water supply is run down, many years ago they used to connect the piping with lead, like a solder, and the corrosive nature of the fluoride will leach the lead out of the joints, and they're refusing to put it in the water supply. I think this might be a face-saving, something safe, for Shire, though they might not have considered this when they went ahead with the consultations.
I just say in
and another. I just quickly try it.
Go ahead.
Be useful. We all have had our meters installed now. Most of us down in Southampton. And when mine was being installed, I was talking to the guys who were putting it in, and the pipes to my house, from the stopcock, my stopcock, to the meter is lead. It's lead. Many houses in Southampton, older houses, still have lead from the meter to their stopcock. If there's fluoride in the water supply, there's a good chance that lead will become more toxic and unknown to many people in Southampton, I should imagine.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. I would just like to add to that the fact that I can't be certain about this, but I've formed a distinct impression that amongst the people who are least keen for this scheme to go ahead are Southern Water themselves. I don't think, one thing we must say, I don't think Southern Water are in the vanguard of this. I think they need this like a hole in the head, frankly. Obviously, if they are ordered to do it, they will do it. But the impression I get is that they're not happy about it, and I think it would be well worth the group's time to continue. I know you've had some correspondence, Stephen, with Southern Water, and I think it would be well worth your time to continue to press them where you think there might be questions of unintended consequences, precisely of the sort that's so helpfully just been described, or of the sort that you're already on the case where piping is likely to affect areas out with the previously designated area which was consulted. I wouldn't think that Southern Water would want to do anything to cover up any risk or danger. I don't think they're particularly pushing this at all, and I think that if we try to press them on discovering points which could be of major importance like that has just been made, I don't see any reason to believe that they wouldn't tell us openly what their true opinions were, and then armed with those opinions, that could again strengthen the case that has probably to be brought, or at least threaten to be brought.
Yeah, I suggest that everyone try and find out if they actually have lead pipe to their stopcock from their meter, because mine is well over 80 feet, which is quite a lot of lead.
Indeed.
Yeah, the house was built in 1809.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1909. Yeah.